Anytime I bring up Yu Hakusho to someone who's watched it, I feel they'll always react by saying it's one of the best anime they've ever seen, and I agree. I feel you rarely get such universal love for an anime, so I want to talk about one of the numerous things that makes Yu Hakusho so great, the fights. To use video game terminology, every sequence of fights in Yu Hakusho felt like it ended with a final boss fight, where characters had to figure out how to outsmart this seemingly unstoppable foe after having to fight a bunch of other wacky characters in a row that felt like boss fights on their own. Rarely were the characters bogged down with random goons during major confrontations, and if they were, there was usually a big one-on-one fight going on at the same time. So I'm going to go over my favorite Yu Hakusho villains that felt like the final boss of their team or series of episodes. While I say villains, I more mean antagonists to the heroes at the time of their fight. Some of these characters are actually stand-up guys, but just had to play the role of antagonist for a plot line. Calling them final boss villains just rolls off the tongue better. Also, I'll be using the anime as the basis for this list, which mostly follows the manga, but still has some changes as with most anime. And since Yu Hakusho has a lot of teams, I'll be teaming up with my co-host NegetiveX.
Howdy ho.
Are you gonna rhyme that with Hakusho?
Oh man, that would have been good to say. Howdy ho, it's time for Yu Hakusho. Bam, I stole it. Can't get it back now. Hope you like that, Mr. Top 10 List.
Now, let's round up our top 10 final boss villains in Yu Hakusho. Number 10, Rando. Rando was like the tutorial boss for the series, but was still a final boss in his own right, showing us what could be expected from the series moving forward. Yusuke and friends have to fight their way through an array of one-on-one fights until one, or multiple of them, reach the strongest fighter at the end, seeing skills we have never seen before. Obviously, the series doesn't just give us the same setup for every villain, but it's good at building up those villains in a tournament or boss rush setting. Since Genkai's tournament was an introduction to Yusuke's and Kuwabara's powers, the fights up to Rando were pretty basic, but still cool ways to show us the ins and outs of spirit energy, also known as Reiki or Aura. Rando's big appeal is that he's a move stealer, honing 99 moves from other fighters that he's killed. He kinda just has the power to do things. Nothing real specific, just random attacks that show off, hey, look at all these supernatural powers that demons could have. When Rando was disguised as a Shaolin monk, he had it pretty consistent with his moves, using elemental style attacks, but he soon blew his cover when we saw him use the shrinking technique. But then when he fought Yusuke, he just did whatever he wanted. He had a thread that looked pretty fun to swing people around with, and he could summon carnivorous fish. I mean, sure, I guess it's convenient when you're fighting in a swamp area. I wonder what his reaction was when he got that power. He was like, ah yes, now I can summon fish whenever I need them. Thanks, Aquaman. He could also pull out a mini demon to feed to the fish to demonstrate their strength. Seems like a useless skill on its own, but I guess he found a way to show it off somehow. The main reason he ends up being kind of lame by the end of his fight is that he basically defeats himself. When Yusuke is almost incapacitated, he decides to go for the flashy end by using the shrinking technique on Yusuke to crush him. But thanks to the technique's arbitrary rule that if your target can't hear the incantation, you get shrunk instead, and Yusuke just happened to have enough algae stuck in his ears from being submerged in the swamp during the fight that he couldn't hear Rando.
I mean, his main problem is he's a dabbler. If he had just spent all that time instead of learning 99 attacks or 100 attacks and killing all those masters, if he just spent the same amount of time learning one, he probably would have been okay. He wouldn't have had to worry about seaweed getting in someone's ears. Although, can you imagine, all of a sudden you get beat because someone has some algae in their ears? A little bit of mud? Just rage quit. I would have left so fast. Let's remember, he does get beat up by a 14-year-old.
I mean, every demon Yusuke fights after this also lost to that same 14-year-old, so it's not as shameful as you make it sound.
Yeah, but this is like a 14-year-old who just learned he has powers. He's just going up against middle schoolers right now and losing. When he beats up Kuwabara, it's like some big fight. It's like, you just beat up a middle schooler, man. Now I'm gonna kill this 14-year-old. It's like, chill, bro. You don't want to be Rando, the slayer of 100 masters, and 2 prepubescent boys.
So thanks to basically a 1 in 1,000 chance, Rando's finisher backfired and Yusuke won thanks to Rando's incompetence. It was good to see an arrogant villain get his comeuppance, but man, this series could have ended right there if Rando went for the basic knockout instead. Number 9. Suzuki. The Dark Tournament was possibly the most iconic thing about Yu Hakusho. It's generally between the Dark Tournament and Chapter Black for people's favorite arcs of the series, and I think I'm in the majority in saying it's the Dark Tournament for me. I just like organized tournaments, and the rulers of Demon World put on a good show, and they don't have an anti-death or anti-weapons clause, so everyone goes all out. It's a fun time for all, except when it's not. Outside of Dr. Chigaki's team, fights were generally one-on-one with the opposing team's ace fighters saved for last, which is why we went with the final boss motif.
Also, I don't want to talk about Dr. Ichigaki because he just makes me uncomfortable. Look at that face. Look at him smiling. Ugh. No doctor should be that happy.
The penultimate team that Team Urameshi faced was Team Yuriatogi, who were based on a bunch of Japanese folklore characters. Despite being in the later rounds of the tournament, they did feel weaker than some of the fighters that were faced up to this point. It makes sense when you look at their history. Suzuki's grand plan was to make a team of weak demons and just give them a bunch of items that make them capable enough fighters and fit their folklore theme. So that explains why the first few fighters of this team seem like they could be underdogs. Though Makintaro could turn his hand into an axe, and that seems pretty cool, or should I say handy.
I would say he's about as powerful as a guy holding an axe.
But it's an axe hand.
I get what you're saying, I'm just saying having an axe hand has less range than having a hand and holding an axe on it. You got more distance there. So like already his reach is out the window. And we already know that weapons are cool in this fight. Like, you know, no one's saying like, oh my god, his strategy is poor. Should have been a lumberjack like his mama wanted.
Suzuki was the strongest and final fighter of the team, but he disguised himself as an old man because he wanted to catch the opponent off guard as the race. He did have a beef with main villain Tagoro, but I think his only reason was really because he likes to be a performer. The dude's a clown and has a bunch of clown moves. He gets his final boss status more for his inventions rather than his own skills. Not that they're bad, but he's beaten pretty quickly when fighting alone, so he seems to shine the most in a support role. Honestly though, he's got a creative moveset, a bunch of clown tricks like rainbow streamers and playing cards, and then he falls back on spirit energy if that fails. He manages to squeeze a whole bunch of final boss style moves in such a short period of time before he's hastily disposed of. It's a bit unfair to judge him since he lost to Master Genkai, who easily sees through his showmanship, but if he went against a less experienced fighter, you know, he might have lasted longer. At least his quick loss made it easy on the new referee girl, who was put through hell having to be a bystander against all of Suzuki's creations.
You know, I want to talk about these announcer girls for a second. First one makes sense. She's doing her job. The second one, I think people complain about how she doesn't, like, know the rules of the sport or anything like that. How could she get this job? She doesn't know anything about this tournament. At first, I was annoyed by this. Like, where did they get this girl? But then it dawned on me. Obviously, they're gonna get somebody who doesn't know the rules of the sport. Because it would take a madman to actually be the referee for any of these fights. Look how many audience members stand. The number one job requirement for this is, are you willing to stand next to gods as they destroy everything around you? Yeah, right, you're the announcer. You'll fill in the rules as you go around. The only people they can get are people who have no idea what's happening, and they're just throwing her on in.
Juri the Fish Girl definitely deserves respect as the ref, but it is hard to top Kodo as best announcer. Number 8, Suzaku. Being between the Genkai tournament and the Dark tournament, the St. Beast's Castle was a glimpse at things to come. A figurative ladder of villains to take out, with each hero facing off one-on-one until you reach their leader at the top. Basically like a tournament, even though it had nothing to do with the tournament. Regardless, I loved the St. Beasts. Their world domination motivation was pretty standard, but they were an early villain group, so I'll give them a pass. They had cool designs based on the Chinese constellation mythical animals of the four elements.
I have to say, something about the Saint Beast that always got on my nerves is they all hated each other. Like, they were always like, oh, well, that guy was the weakest Saint Beast. He shouldn't have even been called. Unlike me, who's more powerful, and then that guy dies. It's like, he was a blithering fool, unlike me.
Suzaku, who's the vermilion bird or phoenix, is their leader, and makes up for his lack of bird features by having an annoying bird that taunts you by being an ass. His main skills are shooting you with lightning and making copies of himself, and then he can make the copies shoot lightning. There was a bit of a puzzle on how to defeat him since the lightning was so deadly, so Yusuke used his brain and attempted to make the leather of his shoes an insulator. Giant lightning storm versus Italian loafers. Love to see it. And yes, Yusuke had an ulterior motive to using his shoes, but still, I enjoyed the scene. I also like that he can destroy his clones to heal himself up, so he gives them life just to replenish his own.
He could make 7 of himself. It's like Naruto Light.
But he came before Naruto.
It's still like Naruto Light. Naruto can make like 10 of himself. Wanna know what's bigger than 7? 10. That's basic math. Bam. Nailed it.
Suzaku doesn't have too much variety when you break him down, but he doesn't have time for all that since he has a lot to maintain. He's got to direct his mind control insects, his zombies, and his own castle at the same time.
He's also a good final boss because he's just not about brawn. He also has some brains in there. He basically sends people to attack Yusuke's girlfriend to like try to destroy him mentally, which is kind of messed up, but also, you know, he's a clever man. He's got a plan with it. Like as soon as things are going bad, he just decides, you know what? Murder his girlfriend. Let's just bring family onto the table right now, just to make it go as quick as possible. At least we gotta see Botan get some action though.
Really? Suzaku gives you the full final boss experience since not only is Yusuke fighting him one-on-one, but the rest of Team Urameshi has to fight his little minions at the bottom of the castle, being cultivated humans who look like they would taste like spinach if I tried to bite them. And as mentioned, he has that irritating bird that yells at you the whole time, saying, "You're going to die, you're going to die." So he has that annoyance factor that he's not only hard to beat, but you have to be constantly reminded that you're getting beaten. The best part of the fight was the small victory of turning that bird into KFC. Number 7, Game Master. The Chapter Black arc was a break from the tournament-style fights. Former spirit detective Sensui gathered a team of humans with supernatural powers, referred to as psychics, with the intention to end the existence of humanity for their crimes, which I'll get to in his inevitable entry. Game Master was just a kid who was an outcast that Sensui manipulated to join his side. Unlike the rest of his partners who relied on ambushes and didn't have any kind of underlings to face first, Game Master turns his confrontation with the heroes into a game, as his nickname implies. He turns a small area into a real-life version of his favorite video game, Goblin City, also known as Game Battler in Japanese, and makes the hero team act as the players in the game, where you have to win 4 out of 7 assorted challenges to defeat the evil Goblin King. Game Master takes the role of the Goblin King to fully bring this game to life, so Game Master literally turns into a final boss in this simulation. And not even a punch has to be thrown at Game Master, since the game is a variety package. The challenges can range from tennis to shoot 'em ups to trivia, and Yusuke dies again, so it's basically like a tournament setting, with Game Master waiting at the end if the player manages to get 3 out of the 4 wins they need. The final game was a round of legally renamed Tetris with Game Master versus Kurama, and Kurama had enough of this kid at this point. He just sternly told the kid that the Goblin King dies when he's defeated in-game, and if he's portraying the Goblin King, well, you know. Also that Sensui was using him, so all of that throws Game Master off his game for his ultimate defeat. I mean, it is distracting when you're told that you're going to die, so I understand.
It is an incredible moral dilemma. Do you kill this one kid to save the world? But I don't think Kurama spent that much time thinking about it. Honestly, he seemed just pretty eager, just be like, I'm gonna go in. Yeah, kid's gonna die. Let's keep going. I got things to do. Let's get out of here before the cops show up.
Disclaimer, that was all a joke. This was actually a very difficult decision and a heavy burden on Kurama. When he's defeated, we then learn that this entire game was run on a Super Famicom. I know those cartridges can pack a lot, but how complex were each of these games if they had to fit 7 of them into one piece of hardware? Those SNES ports of arcade games were pretty good, but corners generally had to be cut. I guess this is truly where my suspension of disbelief ends.
And no one blew into the cartridge before it began, too, so, clearly it's unrealistic.
Number 6, Risho. Risho is the leader of Team Masho, and I kinda forgot about him when watching. Jin is the main rival of Yusuke from the team, and does all the talking for them, and he loves talking. So Risho just kinda stood back in his robe obscured until absolutely necessary. I'm sure he's strong, but it's hard to gauge his power when he fights a heavily injured Kuwabara when he himself is at full power. And that's after part of Team Urameshi was tricked into sitting out against his team. Yusuke couldn't fight him due to some technicality with being out of bounds in the previous fight, and the rest of his team threw themselves at Kurama and Yusuke to make sure they would win by simply having more fighters in the end. Good thing Kuwabara is built with better stuff than your ordinary fighter. He was thought to be incapacitated after the previous round, but thanks to the power of pride, stubbornness, and libido after Yukina arrived, Kuwabara got to pull off the upset of the century.
You gotta remind him, he just kinda walked into this whole situation. Like, Yusuke died and became a spirit detective. Kuwabara just shows up and is like, I can't let this punk be better than me. I'm gonna go fight these demon lords. His own sister's watching it, fighting to death, and she's like, yeah, well, he'll die or he won't. Whatevs. Now, if you excuse me, I gotta go flirt with the main guy in charge of this. Like, he doesn't have to be here for any of this. He could go home and be the toughest guy at his middle school.
But then who would he fight?
Probably that one teacher who's spending way too much time trying to figure out how to take down 14-year-olds. It's like, what's that guy's problem? These are students. He's like, haha, I'm gonna have Kuwabara get beat up by all these people or else I'm gonna expel him. It's like, you're a teacher. Have some class, man. Give him extra homework like a normal person.
I'm also glad Kuwabara finally got to be the fighter who finished off the final boss. He's generally been the underdog who fights some of the earlier fighters up until this point. The fight itself was cool, but Risho is really a one-trick pony when you break him down. He covers himself in clay from the ground and just starts charging. He's a tank, and Kuwabara truly survives with the power of anime magic, since those hits are not light. And like a good final boss, he has advanced forms, where if you pound him into the ground, it just makes him stronger. The earth is his friend, and makes his armor bigger and harder, only outclassed by Kuwabara's pride. Luckily for him, Kuwabara is not the murdering type, so he just gets knocked out in a rather lighthearted way, kind of like a cartoonish, anyone get the number of that truck gag, and then he just leaves, never comes back for revenge, doesn't join any alliance, probably just goes on with his life after this. Respectable. Number 5, Mukuro. The Three Kings arc was the series' final arc, and it showed us that the strongest demons around are actually pretty cool people, Mazoku. The first half of the arc is getting to know the three strongest demons, called the Three Kings, with Yusuke, Kurama, and Hiei each breaking off to join one of them. Raizen was the strongest and most moral of them, but he was in a weakened state from his refusal to eat humans to survive. He entrusts Yusuke to find a way to prevent a war between the other two kings after his nearing death. And there's a lot more to him, but since I consider him to ultimately be a mentor character to Yusuke, I don't put him in the full antagonist category like I would with the other two kings. Anyway, Yusuke proposes a tournament with any demon who would like to participate to determine who would be the new king of the demon world to prevent a power struggle with Raizen no longer around. It's basically self-aware at this point how a tournament solves all problems in this series. Mukuro is one of the two remaining kings and acts as Hiei's final boss in the tournament. She's not actually in the final round against him, but with Hiei training with her previously, he had the most history with this character, and you could tell nothing mattered more to Hiei than the results of this fight, even if it was a loss. You don't always have to win against the boss, since that's what happened here. In fact, there was a lot of symbolism in this fight related to the plot, but since I'm not recapping the entire series, I encourage you to go watch it at some point. Hiei loses a hard-fought battle, where Mukuro shows her strength by taking Hiei's Dragon of the Darkness flame and taming it. That's, wow. Yeah, I see why there's no shame in losing to her. She can also cut through the dimensions, which I always enjoy looking at. As for her physical moves, Mukuro really doesn't need to touch you to hurt you with her punches. She just swings her fist around and energy from them goes flying. Of course, she can make contact with her fists if she wants to, which will, break a lot of bones. Even though I'm just going over her power, her backstory and personality are very interesting and and have a lot more to them than just a desire for power, but for the sake of this list, I'll leave it off here at her being a suitable final opponent for Hiei with a whole lot of wisdom. Number 4, Yomi. The other remaining king was Yomi, and he's calm and collected, being a warrior who wants to be stern and not show any emotions. His big desire is to become the king of the demon world, but he knows his rivals and is very calculating not to jump into a fight without planning, which is a lesson he learned the hard way when he was younger, when he lost his sight in a fight due to being overly aggressive. Yomi is not just tough on the battlefield, but also in negotiations. He generally won't agree to anything that won't be beneficial for him, which included Yusuke's tournament. He eventually did join once his allies went against his wishes, which cemented his role as the final antagonist of the series. He wanted to rule Demon World, not for world domination, but just because he felt like he deserved it as the most powerful and smartest of the demons. It was more of a pride thing than anything else. He didn't hate humans, but he saw no problem with eating them if there were a plentiful amount. I guess it could be worse. Yomi was ultimately Yusuke's target to take out in the tournament, but like Makuro, just because he's the final antagonist for one of the heroes doesn't mean he's going to be defeated in the end. The interesting thing about the final fight for me was how Yomi developed during it. He keeps his calm demeanor, but acknowledges that maybe he'll have fun with the fight, rather than just trying to finish it off quickly to secure the win. There's more to life than just power now. Seeing how Yusuke enjoys the fight lets him enjoy the journey, not the destination. And when Yusuke doubts himself during the fight, Yomi gets legitimately mad that Yusuke's not practicing what he preaches right after Yomi learned about it. And really, learning how to have a good time was basically this entire tournament. Even if the worst demons won, it still feels like we would be fine in the end.
I mean, honestly, the whole final season, I kind of like the tone, how it kind of ends happier with everything, where instead of having, fights to the death, everyone just kind of agrees every few years they're just gonna come together and beat each other. It's all about the fun of it, as opposed to the fight. In some ways, I really love that transition, but man, takes away from the tension.
Yomi's fighting style uses a whole lot of ki. The energy is strong, fast, and plentiful with him. While energy blasts are nothing new to anime, he definitely puts on a good light show with it. Even when he punches the crap out of Yusuke, the animation on his ferocity exudes the power that he's known for. As mentioned, Yomi mainly shines in the personality department as a final boss, but the way he attacks is also exemplary of why he's at the end. Despite being the rival of Ryzen more so than Yusuke, Yomi still proves to be a worthy final challenger in the series. Number 3, Chu. Chu's a big reason I had to specify that the quote-unquote villains on this list are simply the characters who have to fight against the protagonists. It doesn't always represent their alignment. They're not always evil. Chu is just a guy who likes drinking and fighting. He's got no beef with anyone. He's chill and Australian, or Norio Wakamoto depending on which version you're watching.
I really like Chu as a character. I love his whole look. I love the mohawk. He's got a very different personality than most of the other final bosses, I feel like.
In a way, he was like the secret boss of his team, since we were faked out into thinking that Zero was their team leader initially, being the standard edgy boy with fire powers, but our expectations were subverted when the last two members of the team attempted to run away in fear after Zero was killed, and Chu comes out of nowhere to kill them as punishment, or because he found a good excuse to get in line for a fight. He was on the sideline for his team since he lost a game of rock, paper, scissors to see who would have to sit out for the first round, but you can't sit out a fight if your other two teammates are unable to fight since they're kinda dead, so Chu found a way to sneak into this round. Not sure why their strongest fighter would have been in the running to sit out for a round, but I guess I admire how they treated each other equally. Regardless, Chu reveals that he's the real team leader and shows us how he's all over the spectrum with his attacks. He can go big or keep it basic. His main way of fighting is the drunken fist. He's got quick feet, enhanced punches, and major ki attacks, which is from his ability to convert the alcohol in his veins to pure energy, but he can also dial it back a bit if he needs to. When evenly matched and out of energy, he proposes the knife-edge death match. No tricks, no unknown techniques, just a bit of fisticuffs until somebody falls, showing his honor as a fighter for such a technically fair match. The main catch is you can't move past the knives that he sticks in the ground, and you have to put your feet up against against them to ensure that you don't, with the added risk that, well, they're knives, they're sharp.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, when he pulled out knives, I thought they were gonna stab each other with them. I didn't expect foot slicing.
The winner can also kill the loser with those knives, so there were some high stakes to this small fight. Since Chu was still a demon, he was raised where killing the weak was pretty common if it's in a fighting setting, so he really didn't know any better.
And willing to settle a fight with a 14-year-old like men with knives. Man, I have to say, so much of the show gets darker when you remember that Yusuke is only 14 years old.
Luckily, Yusuke wins and shows Chu that you don't need a fatality to show who's the strongest, leading Chu down a better path. Number 2, Sensui. Sensui was the main villain of the Chapter Black arc, where he gets a group of psychics that have a beef with humanity like he does, and plans to break the barrier between the human and demon world. His reason for doing this was when he was the spirit detective slaying demons and such, he learned that many of them were not actually evil, and humans were the real monsters. The infamous Chapter Black tape showed the atrocities and torment that arrogant and powerful humans subjugated weak demons through, simply for their own amusement. This drove Sensui mad to a point where he wanted to get revenge on humanity, or so he says. Some of his motives are a mystery. Either way, Yusuke and crew see the obvious shades of gray here, and after defeating 5 of his 7 allies, it was up to the crew to defeat Sensui himself. They actually had an earlier confrontation with him, but this is where Sensui pulls out every move imaginable. We learn that Sensui has 7 different personalities, each with different ways of dealing with a fight, so it's almost like you're fighting him in stages. He starts you off easy with some kickboxing, then he adds a bit of spirit energy, and then he just fires balls of energy that engulf the area, and eventually he just releases the personality that has the power of gun. Not spirit gun, he just turns his hand into a pistol. Points for creativity.
What's your personality? I can turn flesh into a gun. What? That's not, first of all, that's insane, but second of all, that's not really a personality. Oh no.
He even has different visual forms, kind of. They're just wardrobe changes to represent different powers, but hey, new powers. He has defensive armor and offensive armor, the latter of which increases his physical strength, and it's pretty noticeable. He doesn't just tell, he shows. His fists are now earthquakes. There are some other odds and ends of his attacks that he shows off, but I think that's a good rundown of his moveset. The fight itself does end a bit anticlimactically for me, but there's a good story reason for it, which really carries the end of this arc. I know we've divulged spoilers already on this list, but I'm not sure how much I want to spoil here, even though we're discussing an anime that's decades old and has extensive previews for upcoming episodes at the end of each one.
And there's a ton of spoilers in those. Like, keep a little mystery, man. Don't need to reveal it all. My favorite one where it's like, next week on Yu Hakusho, I actually end up beating this guy. I know that might be a little bit of a surprise, but not really. It's like, you're giving it away! Where's my sense of mystery?
If you've seen Yu Hakusho, you probably know who number 1 is already. I couldn't even resist putting him on the thumbnail, he's just that good. Number 1, younger Toguro, best antagonist and all-around badass. Watching the series when I was younger, I was so enthralled that Toguro was this unstoppable force that could tear through anything, that I overlooked how he was pretty consistent with his morals and not particularly evil in the end. He's someone who's made mistakes in his past and intends to atone for it by setting up the best fight of his life that will ultimately end it. He was the partner of Yusuke's teacher Genkai in their youth, but became vengeful when his students were killed by the champion of the Dark Tournament. Their team won the year after that incident, and the winners get any wish they desire, so Toguro and his brother wish to become demons so they would never grow old and keep their power. Genkai left him for doing this, and he eventually regretted his decision over the years, but you could never tell behind his calm, cool guy persona. Despite him becoming a demon, he still keeps his moral code. He seems a lot more antagonistic than he actually is, because we're seeing the plot from Yusuke's perspective. Toguro wants Yusuke to give it his all in their eventual fight, so he tried to fire up Yusuke as much as possible so he's at his max power. He's gotta break out all the intimidation factors when Yusuke's around, but in reality, he doesn't want Yusuke to go down the same path that he's stuck on. Toguro only kills in battle or if someone is immoral towards the weak. He does kill a lot in the Dark Tournament, but if it's in the ring, it's to honor the fighter that he's going up against because they're strong enough to die in battle against him, and if it's outside the ring, it's usually because someone is trying to cheat in the tournament, like bribing the judges or something like that. Even when we first meet him when he's the muscle of an underground gambling ring, when their leader Tarakune wants Toguro to kill a chimera to prove his loyalty, Toguro initially pushed back on the idea and apologizes to the creature as he does it since killing random demons is not his thing. He just did it to protect his less evil ulterior motive to joining the guy. However, he has no problem killing Tarakune later on since that guy's soul is as ugly as his face. This occurred at the end of the series' first arc, meaning Toguro was the final boss of that arc and the Dark Tournament arc following it, making him a final boss twice. The first time, he just felt like a bouncer for Tarakune. He still put up a good fight with his shape-shifting brother as an assist, but you didn't know how much of a role he would eventually have. You thought maybe he'll just be a goon for an episode or two. Since he was ultimately throwing the fight for his real boss, Toguro pulled some punches, but was still using his main powers against Yusuke and Kuwabara. He pumped up his muscles with demon energy, and used his brother as a sword and shield, but it was essentially a sampler of his big finale fight in the Dark Tournament.
Yeah, I gotta say, I got a couple problems with the whole using his brother as a shield. His brother can literally turn into any shape, and his grand strategy is just to, like, be a shield or a knife. Like, I feel like they could have done something better there. Extended Toguro's punches. I don't know. Maybe I'm just complaining.
Once Toguro forcefully invites Yusuke to the tournament, his big thing is talking about how much of his power he's really using. When he pumps up his muscles, he says that he's only using X% of his true power. He generally stayed in the range of 20 to 50%, but the more he pumped up, the less human his muscle build began to look. Just having a definitive number to describe power always seems to be a fan favorite in anime.
This man can't do math to save his life. Every time he's like, this is 20% of my power. Now I'm at 30%, but I'm like 3 times stronger. It's like, God, I'm using 50% power. I'm using 60% power. I've been watching his percentages. I'm just saying, it's not an equidistance he's including it. The difference between 80 and 90 seems to be much greater than the difference between his like 50 and 80.
You could tell how serious this fight got when Toguro declared he was breaking out the 100% power, where his body gets all gray and wrinkled. This is likely because he's fully tapped into his demon energy, so his human skin takes a backseat. It's truly like you're fighting a final boss in stages.
Want to know how you can tell what percentage power Toguro is at? By how much neck he has left. Because every time he powers up, it gets a little shorter. You know, people could measure it. They could pull out a ruler and be like, I'm at 50% power. It looks to me like you're at 30% here, bud. Are you just trying to be nice to me?
I've always liked how his main ability is raw strength. Generally, characters like that in media are slowed down or aren't as calculating as Toguro, so he breaks that cliche nicely. When he's not using physical attacks, he's just standing there, menacingly. And by that, I mean he exudes energy just because it can't all be contained in his body at full power. He hurts you by existing. The bullets of energy just fly out effortlessly. The body also takes nearby souls just to stay intact, since it's that hard to maintain. So, I guess he didn't notice all those souls being stolen so he can keep his moral code, right? I suppose that's how you know you've gone down the wrong path. So with a full arc dedicated to his foreboding power and helping make the Dark Tournament, dare I say, one of the best anime arcs ever, Toguro is the ultimate final boss of Yu Hakusho. Now, what did you think? Did you like all the antagonists we picked, or are there a few other characters that should be deemed final boss? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.